President, today we are discussing two issues which in fact are related to each other. Number one is the outrageously high cost of oil and gas, and the second is the crisis, the planetary crisis that we face as a result of global warming. There are some people who think that we've got to address the price of high oil prices today and not worry about global warming. Some people think we have to worry about global warming and ignore the reality facing millions of people that can't afford oil and gas. I think we are actually smart enough to walk and chew gum at the same time. I think we can address and must address both of these very, very important issues. Madam President, my office has recently published a small booklet. It's called The Collapse of the Middle Class, Letters from Vermont and America. And it talks about what is going on not only in my state, but all over this state, where the middle class is declining. People are working longer hours for low wages. They're losing health care. They're losing their pensions. They're losing their good-paying jobs. And after all of that, when you got gas at $4 a gallon at the pump, home heating oil outrageously high, many people throughout this country are now falling over the economic cliff. In terms of oil and gas prices, the time is now for the United States Congress to tell our friends at ExxonMobil and the other oil companies who are enjoying record-breaking profits. Last year, ExxonMobil earned more profits than any corporation in the history of the world. Last year, the head of Occidental Oil, a major oil company, had enough money to provide $400 million in compensation for their CEO. I think it's time to tell the oil companies to stop ripping off the American people. I think it's time for us to pass a windfall profits tax which says enough is enough. But it is not just the oil companies who are ripping off the American people. Just the other day at the Commerce Committee, there was a very important hearing in which George Soros and major economists testified that it's not just oil company greed, but you have speculators on Wall Street who are driving prices up, which result perhaps in a 35% increase of what a barrel of oil should be. And we've got to deal with that issue as well. This is the so-called Enron loophole. Right now, through hedge funds, through unregulated markets, there's a massive amount of trading on oil futures, which are driving oil prices up. We should be regulating that speculation. It should be transparent. And I think in the process, when we do that, as was the case with Enron and electricity, as was the case with propane gas, as was the case with natural gas, I think if we begin to address speculation in terms of oil futures, we can drive oil prices down. Bottom line, we have got to do that. In my state of Vermont, in rural states all over this country where people are traveling long distances to work, they can't afford unlimited incomes to pay $4 for a gallon of gas. When the weather gets 20 below zero in Vermont, people cannot afford to pay twice as much this year as they did a couple of years ago for home heating oil. So let us have the courage to take on the speculators. Let us have the courage to take on the oil companies and fight to lower oil and gas prices. In addition, we can't ignore the crisis in global warming. My friends come to the floor and they say, well, the scientific evidence is not clear. That's not true. Virtually every leading scientist who knows something about the issue, including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has said with 100% certainty that global warming is a reality. In fact, what they have told us is that the situation is more dire than they had previously predicted. If we are concerned about the drought that we are seeing today, which will only get worse, if we are concerned about the hunger that we are seeing as a result of that drought, which will only get worse, if we're worried about the severe weather disturbances that we're seeing right now, if we're worried about flooding, if we're worried about disease, it is absolutely imperative that we address the crisis of global warming, and we address it now. Now, some people say, well, there may be economic dislocation if we do it. There may be, and we have to address that. But I think there are enormous economic opportunities I believe the evidence is clear that we can create millions of good-paying jobs as we move toward energy efficiency, as we produce automobiles not that get 15 miles per gallon, but hybrid plug-ins which get 150 miles per gallon, as we rebuild our deteriorating rail system so that people do not have to get into a car to go where they want to go, but can get on good rail, that we deliver cargo via rail. Madam President, there is enormous opportunity not only in terms of energy efficiency, in saving huge amounts of fossil fuel, but also in sustainable energy. And I have tremendous optimism in what we can do with the technology that is already on the shelf, not to mention the technology that will be coming in the near future. In terms of solar thermal plants, which are now being built in the southwestern part of this country as well as all over the world, you have plants, solar thermal plants that are being built which can provide as much electricity as small nuclear power plants with no or virtually no greenhouse gas emissions. We're talking about producing 15, 20 or more % of the electricity that the United States needs right from solar thermal plants. In addition to that, as Germany is doing, as California is now doing, tremendous opportunity with photovoltaics. We could put photovoltaics on 10 million roofs in this country. The more we produce, the more the price goes down, and we create jobs in the process. Wind is the fastest growing source of new energy in the world and in the United States. It is also becoming less and less expensive. I'm not just talking about large wind farms in Texas, in the Midwest. We're talking about small wind turbines that can be placed in people's backyards all over rural America. Geothermal,
Senator,
biomass.
7 minutes.
There is huge potential, and we must go forward for the sake of our kids and our grandchildren. Thank you.